The Book TV bus is traveling the country, visiting bookstores, libraries, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
We are at the Kansas City Literary Festival with Diane Glancy, author of Stone Heart, a novel of Sacajawea. How do you begin to write a novel about a historical figure like Sacajawea?
Well, first of all, something has to interest me, and I knew that the Lewis and Clark expedition was nearing its 200-year anniversary. And it seemed to me as a girl, I remember that Sacajawea was a great heroine of the journey. She knew the way upriver, and as it turned out, when I started research, she did not at all. So I wanted to find the story. I wanted to add her voice because she was basically left out of the Lewis and Clark journals.
There are many pronunciations and spellings of Sacajawea. Is there a correct way, and how did you decide which spelling to use in your book?
Well, I prefer Sacajawea because that's what I'd always heard, but it's also Sacajawea and probably a few other possibilities, but I just went with what I was familiar with.
What was Sacajawea's relationship like with Lewis and Clark?
Well, it's kind of complicated. They ignored her, more or less, in the journals. They said once in a while she's digging roots, or she did this or that, but it's like she wasn't there at all. But I think they got a lot out of her presence. She was a woman, she had a baby. I think around the campfire at night when she sang a song to the baby when she fed him, that there was a humanizing effect on the men as they traveled.
Why did you choose to write the novel in the form of a journal?
Because I'm interested in historical voices, in giving voice to those who did not have a voice. And the Lewis and Clark journals are so thorough and so well written, I wanted her voice to fit in with theirs. I wanted her journal, her side of the expedition.
You spent some time driving parts of the Lewis and Clark expedition. What were those trips like?
I remember them as very enjoyable. I lived in Minnesota at the time, and I drove to Fort Clatsop up on the Oregon coast 2 different summers, 2000 and 2001. I was by myself. I stopped at different museums and interpretive centers. If I'd have been with someone, I would have had a good time. I would have been talking. I had to be by myself on the land, listening to the Lewis and Clark journals on tape and stopping at various points where they had stopped, and that's where I found her voice.
How long were your travels?
Well, it was over 2 different summers. I would say 2 or 3 weeks each summer. It takes a long time to drive from St. Paul, Minnesota to the Oregon coast.
You wrote that you baptized your manuscript. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I had traveled from St. Paul to Wolf Point, Montana, and I had not yet heard her voice. So at Wolf Point, I saw a sign that said river access. So I turned down the road and stopped at the river, and I'd had a few rough notes on a piece of paper, and I just held them under the edge of the river and washed some of the water over it in a creative baptism of sort. And after that, I did begin to hear her voice in my imagination. The first thing of hers I heard was, "You know you are nothing they want." And I also knew that it would be written in second person.
Why did you name the novel Stone Heart?
I think because she had to hide a lot of her feelings. She had to have a stone heart for the endurance of the journey. She had an abusive husband. They didn't pay a lot of attention to her during the journey, the hardships that she was going through, and she just had to be autonomous, I would say, and hold her feelings within her.
What place does Sacajawea have in our nation's history? Do you think she's properly being taught in history classes today?
No, I don't. But I think she has a very important part. She's one of the many left out voices, women and minorities. And I think when you study them, you begin to realize another dimension to our history, the richness of it, the fullness of it. It takes many points of view to tell the history of a nation.
We've been speaking with Diane Glancy, author of Stone Heart, a novel of Sacajawea. Thank you.
For more information about the Book TV bus, visit our website at booktv.org/booktvbus.